Hello, hello. How you guys doing today? Going to go ahead and get started. Hey, Josh. So, have a few different things gonna talk about today, which is gonna be hopefully not too long, but should be enjoyable. Sorry. Finishing up some of the stuff I was trying to get ready and didn't quite finish out. So first I wanted to talk about, or I'm going to be talking about, sideboarding for your local meta. The big challenge that you can have with playing CEDH is you can deal with either your online just in general, which is what most primers are built off of and what most deck lists are built for. And then you have what you play with locally. Probably the biggest difference that we normally deal with is if you have somebody in your local play group that's playing like Yisan or Selvala or another monocolored deck, you can run into issues where you really would benefit from changing what you guys are playing. And I did want to double check something. Can you guys hear me? I haven't quite done the full check here. Sorry. Okay, good. My audio feedback is not doing good. Perfect. Okay. After doing that, I was going to talk about some of the cards from Strixhaven and how they've actually impacted things, which there's a few decks that are kind of been brewing, and also some of the combos that we expected to hit there. Also going to hit a deck review for one of the patrons, Josh, in chat. He's got an Imoti, mostly casual deck that's pretty fun. And I've got some, I think, some good suggestions for that. And then gonna finish this out with some sort of game. If people want to join in or not, we can do that. All right. So let's see if I can pull this up. And we can either go with some of the decks that I kind of put together as examples where sideboarding could really help you for your local meta, or if people have any thoughts or decks they're currently dealing with in chat, we can pull those out. Thanks, Skepticism. Yeah, really glad to be back myself. Let's see, we're good there, we're good there, we're good there. Don't need to go back there. All right. Only downside right now is I'm having to deal with multiple screens and figuring out where I am. There we go. We've moved. So in this case, I'm thinking of if you're playing a general Thrasios and Tymna deck, which is kind of like the most vanilla of CEDH decks right now. You have 5 or 6 major ways to play them. Razakats, Thassa's Oracle, Consultation, Isochron Scepter's kind of not really that big of a thing anymore. I mean, it's in there and everything, but it's not its own thing. And Aetherflux Reservoir has mostly gone away, so actually I'm kind of curious what they have in here. I actually have been using the decklist database quite a bit recently. I don't know if you guys have been as much. Yeah, okay. Midrange, Hermit Druid, and Razakats are what most people have. And if I remember correctly, almost all of them are going to be running Thassa's Oracle. Let's just check. I hadn't looked through all of the lists yet, but hey, we've got a Thassa's Oracle. We've got a Thassa's Oracle. We've got a Thassa's Oracle. And a Thassa's Oracle. And a Thassa's Oracle. I think we're seeing a pattern here with the Thassa's Oracle. And another one. And another one. Yeah, I think we pretty much have one way of playing right now. It's Thassa's Oracle all around. So with this kind of in mind, I wanted to talk about where we can find. Yeah, it is the easiest blue-black win con at the moment, but in general, it is the most efficient win con because most of the cards that are part of it can find the other parts of it. And you have a smattering of other options mixed in with those. What you will find most of the time is you will find considering boards. And this is kind of the part that a lot of primers are going to include, but they don't necessarily include why we're considering these and what would be the reasons for doing those. This might be easier if people have their own decks or they had questions about, or I can talk about decks that I'm more familiar with. And I've done a lot of this consideration before. I'll let chat give a moment while I get some water. All the Kave Guru decks. Now, this is not something I have actually looked at much. So, Kave combo. Alright. By Guru, what is the Guru that you're talking about? Or is it just Kave Guru of Spores? Kave Guru of Spores is probably what I'm guessing. Okay. Give me just a second to double check what all we're doing here. Yeah, it's infinite with Trilobite. I have found it's kind of amazing how much I have been able just to, after you do this often enough, you start to just see the important cards fairly quickly and the combos that they go with. If you're not familiar with most of them, you will start to learn it pretty quick. We're on Tainted Pact. We're on Tainted Pact. I don't get Earthcraft with only 3 basics in the deck, but if you can fetch for them, maybe. Oh, no. We have 5. No, we have 4. Forest, Swamp, Forest, no plains. We have 3 basics in the deck. Alright. Let me look at a few others really quick, sorry. Yeah, that's what I assumed that we're looking at. Yeah. And this is a somewhat obvious sideboard, but I'll get to that in a moment. Let me see. This is more of what I was looking for. Very much so what I was looking for. I can definitely work with that regarding what I was wanting to talk about. And this is... Tosh was asking about water. Yay. Okay. So, Gave, Razaketh. We have 100 cards, but we have 21 cards in the sideboard, meaning we have a bunch of things that we can pull in or pulling out based on what we're playing with. And the way I found it personally is that I have a group of people that I've played with in person, and each of them has either 1 or 2 decks. And so that gives me a meta game of about 6 to 8 decks that I could either play around or I could play in general. And in this case, Choke is probably one of the most backbreaking green cards that are out there. It's just about as hard as Back to Basics. And if you're playing against any mono green or sorry, any mono blue or 2-color decks, this is an amazing card to bring in. If you've got a Chain Veil Teferi, um, or anything like Momer Vig, uh, or some of the newer like Sig, or what's that other one's name? There was a new Demir that I wasn't super familiar with. Arami, not that one. Oh, it must have been in a different one, but Yuriko for sure. Uh, this is something where you need to realize that you are specifically pulling it in because you're playing with that person regularly. And there's two things for it. Usually I wouldn't bring these in if that is like one player. But if it's the meta game, if I'm playing against multiple mono blue decks and you start to see them adjusting their decks specifically for the decks around them, this is one I would bring in. Uh, Goblins are the best combo deck in Historic. Changed my mind. People play Historic? I don't know if I can change your mind at all because I have no clue about that environment other than hearing that LSV played a really fun ultimatum deck that would get you Omniscience or another ultimatum. That's about all I know about Historic. So, let's go back here. Where was I? Sideboarding. As far as adjusting to your meta, it's kind of an arms race. There are things that I personally don't do unless other people start doing because I prefer to build a deck towards the general aggregate of decks out there and then make these specific card choices in case things happen. But as an example, Choke is one of the more backbreaking island hate cards. Collector Oof, I mean, in this deck you have primary combo engines in Phyrexian Altar and Ashnod's Altar. Having the ability to turn off your opponents, say if they're like an Urza, or I mean, Chain Veil Teferi is a really easy one to point out there, or even non-green decks that are focusing on artifact ramp. I don't know exactly how to say your name. Cat Fesnes? Cafetsnes? Yeah. I don't think many people are playing Historic here. I tried playing Arena, but then I refuse to pay money to Magic twice. If I can't own the cards, I'm not going to actually like pay into Arena, and the free to play grind was way too much. It was worse than Hearthstone's free to play grind. So I gave up after hitting Mythic 2 months in a row. Never went back to it. Um, it's yeah, it's just more fun to play Commander over the internet than it is to play Arena. Um, best of one is as bad as Hearthstone Ladder. You just it's not an enjoyable way to spend time. Tainted Backless Losses Oracle and Historic on Arena. I kind of like that. It will bring people more aware to how good Tainted Pact is if they haven't already gotten there. But Yeah. Um, let's move on. Collector's Oof. If you can, the whole goal of these is that if you can hurt your opponents more than you actually care about them, it's amazing. The point of Collector Oof being really great is that if you can lock down the board and then cast your commander, for 1 mana you can turn the Collector Oof off whenever you need to. And if you're going against like a blue-red deck, you're going against a Niv Mizzet or something like that, Collector Oof is just like a giant nail in the coffin for them. It's almost impossible to get through until you draw a piece of removal, which you're not running as many tutors, so it's really hard. Compost. Obviously, you need to be in a black-heavy environment. If you have any mono colored deck that isn't mono black that you're playing with regularly, I wouldn't really run it. But if you can see black in every single pod, if you can see more than one black player in every single pod, I would play Compost. It's an amazing card for card advantage. And if as long as you can say 2 people at the table are going to be feeding you black cards in the bin, 100% worth it. This is kind of on the area with Collector Oof. If you're playing against any sort of Underworld Breach decks, this is really the big one that's hurting Breach specifically. And the reason this hurts Breach more than anything else is because it doesn't care about Thassa's Oracle. You could Thassa's Oracle, and then you could Tainted Pact in response, and you're just fine under Deafening Silence. Eldritch Evolution. So I'm curious what Eldritch Evolution would be transitioning for here, unless it's directly towards... Okay, going to a Linvala actually makes a lot of sense on Eldritch Evolution. You theoretically could go to Razaketh from Gave. No, you can't. Yeah. So this would kind of be on the similar line with Collector Oof, but transitioning one of your 2-drops into a Linvala. If that is, this would be like if you're going against a like a Yisan deck or a very commander-centric activated abilities deck, I would 100% run this. It's just entirely worthwhile. You kind of have to think about how often you need to actually look at these types of cards, more often than not. If you have Protean Hulk in your deck, then yes, I could totally see going Gave to Hulk. Yeah. I've been kind of going through this individually on cards, but I'm curious if what I am saying is making sense to people here regarding what to actually consider and how many to consider for your metagame. What is going on here? Nope, we're good. Can you play the new Lightning Helix at a tournament if no one can read it? I mean, technically, if the card is... Regardless of the language of the card, if you are able to identify that it is actually that card, then you are able to play it. You don't actually need to have... As long as you can easily identify what the card is, you don't need to have them be able to read it. But if you can identify that it is uniquely Lightning Helix, and I believe so let me pull this over here. Where's the Strixhaven Mystical Archives Japanese? So the biggest thing is that the name is clearly visible, which you can't really see here, but the casting cost is here, and you would be able to identify this from a Google search fairly quickly. Now, if you're playing a random card and saying it's Lightning Helix and it's not Lightning Helix, you've got another problem. But yes, if it's a WotC printed card, it's 100% legal printing. All right. So people are kind of getting what I'm saying as far as when to run a card. Generally, for each of the pieces of hate that are going to be on a sideboard, I personally say if you're seeing 2 out of 6 decks regularly, I would heavily consider running that piece of hate. And at the same time, finding what cards to pull out can actually be a little bit more challenging. Uh, what I usually look at for those is tertiary combo pieces that don't provide card advantage. So if I was to pull out, I'm trying to put a collector oof in, I would personally look at Young Wolf or Stranglerootgeist as primary cards to look at possibly pulling out. Even though they do come back, they do give you counters fairly easily. They are replaceable effects. Can we get an ETA for what? So this is not a Protean Hulk deck. We do not have Protean Hulk in this deck. So that's kind of you need to identify whether it's part of a combo, whether it's a replaceable effect. These are main combo lands for Earthcraft? What are these? Because I am not familiar with that. Does this have primer? This does not have primer. You can remove the counters, you can sack them. Gave. I'm trying to see if I can understand this because you can tap it to untap a land to get the mana to get a counter on Gave. You can then sack it for Gave. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so these are basically you're using Earthcraft to and the Undying to untap a land twice, one to sack it and one to remove the counter so that you have an infinite sack outlet. Gotcha. And that's why we have Earthcraft, and that's why we only have like 3 basics in the deck. Gotcha. This is something where I'm not 100% familiar with Guru of Spores. But in this case, I would in fact still look at removing one of these two. I would probably remove Stranglerootgeist, specifically because they are part of combos, but you have multiple versions of them in the deck anyways, and it will be generally better to put in a hate piece that will entirely lock out your opponents and look for another tutor to get that get this win. Only a 5k deck. Yes. Where does it actually have the cost for the deck in total? I don't know where it does it on Moxfield. I'm not 100% familiar with it. There's some things about Moxfield that I do not like. Gotcha. I'm looking in the white area, not looking down at the purple for some reason, because I'm looking for scrollable data. Yeah. Only 5k. The stupid part about this is that a lot of it is in lands, and a lot of it's in stupid lands that are just like, here's, yeah. Do they even have a cost on Savannah? Yeah. Cost of Magic's getting too high. I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here. I am personally concerned with the cost of Magic being too high and people getting priced out. And I'm also concerned with counterfeit cards being of too good quality and taking up the market and saturating the market to the point that people lose confidence in collectible cards and we hit a bubble. Right now, I have seen counterfeits from China that do everything but the blue core. They bend, they use rosettes, they can pass the light test, they just don't have blue paper core. And my understanding thus far is so that it's not 100% counterfeit. I don't quite know because I have seen blue core ones. I have seen people mention that they have purchased blue core ones that are essentially duplicates of Magic cards. The the foil on the bottom of the cards was figured out in like under 6 months. People have duplicates of that foil. So yeah, I am definitely concerned that we're sitting on a Beanie Baby bubble of old cards, and it's one of the reasons why I don't look at trying to sell any of my reserve list cards right now, because I don't want to look at how much they're worth, because I don't want to be concerned in my head that if I'm playing with a card and it's worth like $5,000 that I'm gonna have problems if I nick it, and then also later on when it goes down to like $300 that I don't care as much. But that's me. But I'm entirely fine with it going down to $300 because I probably paid like $30 for it, and I was just lucky, and it's stupid that they cost that much. All right, off the soapbox. uh, yeah, off the soapbox. We've talked about Gave. Um, I will say there is one thing that I don't know if you saw. I posted 2 videos this week. They are on deck breakdowns for decks out of the CEDH decklist database. And this is a project that I have started and I am going to be working on, which is to take every deck off the database and do a quick rundown for them. I started off with Tashar, Crackdown Ironworks Tashar, and I did Walking Ballista Heliod. The goal is to take these decks and give you a top-down view of what you're trying to do, what to look out for, and just kind of give you an idea if you might be interested in playing the decks. Particularly, I decided to do this because there is a series, or there's a league that has been created on the CDH Discord. They're calling it Major League Commander, I believe is what they're calling it, and I am participating in it. We're drafting out decks on Saturday, and then games start happening fairly quickly after that. Let me see if I can find that schedule. Getting a bunch of noise in the background. Yeah, so when I was looking through the list of decks that were draftable, there were well over 100 decks, and I hadn't realized how many decks were actually out here. Let me zoom in on this to make it a little easier to see. But it goes from basically mono white, mono blue, goes through the database and gets the major decks for most commanders. So you might see the same deck multiple times, but it's a major iteration for major iteration for the commander. And I Hello, hello. Can you guys hear me? You should be able to hear me again. Yeah. I need to do one thing. Sorry. I forget that if my headset is not actually hearing anything, it doesn't like to stay on. So let me just have it start playing music really quietly, and I'll be okay. Yeah. All right. So I was saying this is the major iterations. They're going to be drafted. If you are not familiar, we actually have a draft order of players that are going to be drafting. Um, Timmy, he made the CEDH Nexus. Rebel AI. Scoots is awesome. I don't necessarily know all these people. Sick Robot, he's the guy that's pretty much definitely not. Uh, Valros, all the Hulk piles there. Are you guys actually hearing that music? Don't think you should. Okay, good. All right. Scared me for a moment. Somebody said mood metal music, and that's technically what I'm playing to keep this headset on. Lurker, um, known actually for Guru, for Gave as his primary deck. Pongo on Najila. Infinite Imox been in the scene for forever. Ian is comedian. If you've seen his channel, there's me. Braden, if he is CEDH Cast, I believe, is his thing. Flash and Ready has been doing a lot of stuff with Elsha. And he's a mod several different places. Geez, Coinman. I haven't seen Coinman in forever. Yeah, so this is starting up. We're going to have games coming up. Gonna have games happening here on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. I will be recording mine and trying to give my local commentary. I might actually be recording what my hand is the entire time so that I can bring it back after the fact. But yeah, um, so I was looking through this and found that there's probably half these decks that I have no clue what they are or what their wins are. And I figured there's a good number of people out there that probably haven't ever even looked at a deck. And I wanted to go through and I mean, we've got 146 of these. If I'm doing 2 a week, that's what, 70 weeks worth of content. There's going to be a lot of this, but I will definitely be able to get this taken care of there. Yeah, let me see. I'm going to catch up on chat here. Waiting for Urza, yes. Urza, I actually have already written the script. So one thing I am doing with this series is I am talking with the primer owners or the owners of the deck list that are on the database, and I am working with them to make sure that the primer that I'm writing is accurate. So for the two that I did there, I reached out to the ones you've seen. I talked with Mateus Nogueira from CEDH Brazil for Tashar, just to make sure that I was getting things correctly and there wasn't like something really big I missed. And there's a few times where I have been where like I'm like, you sack this creature. It's like, no, we never sack that. We sack this other one that's right next to it. Stuff like that. Um, and sometimes it's just me messing up and writing, and sometimes it's me not even knowing. And I like learning that. So actually, I am covering both Polytyrant and UPS. Um, so we will have both sides of Urza. So You see Urza, we have Polytyrant, and we have Power Scepter. Yeah. Um, Polytyrant does have notable advantages, but you do lose out on a lot of the really strong creatures. Hushbringer being the big one that you don't get. Um, there's a give and a take. I like both of them. So there are notable advantages, notable disadvantages. I think the part of Polytyrant being able to get through a lot of the hate pieces are probably the biggest upside to it. Specifically, that Tidespout Tyrant can bounce like a Drannith Magistrate or a Null Rod or a Cursed Totem and can unlock Urza is actually a really big advantage compared to the Power Scepter lines, which need a separate card entirely. Tidespout Tyrant just needs another spell in your hand that you can cast. So, yeah, if you're playing in a stacks heavy meta, then yes, the Poly Tyrant build 100% will work better for you. So, I've gotten a little off topic. I've gone through these things. Let me see. Next thing that I was going to be talking about was a um, finishing up talking about cards from Strixhaven. So last time I was online, we actually didn't have a full spoiler, and there was just a few cards that I still wanted to talk about from Strixhaven. And we're a month in. So Witherboom Apprentice has started showing up. Specifically, it showed up in the Nath stacks and the Hepatra decks. Um, you're seeing Witherboom Apprentice and Chain of Smog. The black-white ones, is there... What you're talking about, recent skepticism? Oh, new removal pieces. Yes. So there is the white and a black disenchant. What's creature, artifact, or planeswalker? No, not creature. Artifact, enchantment, or planeswalker, right? Is that Vanishing Stroke? Uh, Vanishing Verse as remove target or exile target monocolored permanent. And CMC equals 2T instant ESTX. Fracture. Uh, Kudos to you if you're playing the French Fracture, which is just strictly better because it says destroy target artifact, creature, or planeswalker. Unfortunately, I think Oracle will beat you up with that. But yeah, if you haven't seen Artifact und Creature und Planeswalker, whereas everyone others is very obviously Artefacto, Enchantamiento. There were a lot of bad text in this set. Let's see. Yes, Exile Monocolor is incredibly strong. The Vanishing Verse. Sorry. This is really good. I actually need to pick one up still. I'm going to be putting it in a bunch of decks that I have. So I probably need to pick up like 3 or 4. Witherbloom. I'm kind of happy that it's seen play, though I personally do not prefer the um, the win con for it. I don't like that Chain of Smog strips your hand. I'm okay with LED in an Underworld Breach deck because you can interact with a breach in play and you have counter spells in your graveyard. I don't like Chain of Smog with Withered Bloom Apprentice because they can basically just wait for you to discard your hand and then kill the apprentice or counter the chain. It's a little it's glass cannony to me. Um, I don't know if any of you guys have seen Wandering Archaic, but this is a beating. I've seen it. Let me actually zoom in because I noticed how small it is on screen. I have seen this be Eldritch Evolutioned into 3 times now. And it is one of the more frustrating cards to play against. It is like an automatic 2 cost increase on almost every spell. It's worse than Rhystic Study. It's worse than uh, it's worse than Fish. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, this turns a demonic tutor into a 4 cost tutor. Or somebody just gets to tutor a card. And the thing is they could tutor a counterspell for whatever you're tutoring for. It's just crazy. Yeah, it's a decent body. It's not a crazy body. It gets through most of the singles. It gets through like a Braid or Lightning Bolt if you're running against that, and it gets through Anger of the Gods or Pyroclasm. I mean, it's gonna die just like Crown does, and it doesn't have flying, so you still kind of have to worry about that. Diabolic Tutor is definitely playable in CEDH. Uh, it is like tutor number 4 or 5 usually, but it is playable. It is playable. But if you've paid the additional cost, it's already been cast, and the copy doesn't need to be cast. So you just copy it, and you don't have to do that sack as well. Um, I am not necessarily on top of Grim being better. Uh, oh, Diabolic Tutor. What? I haven't seen. No, Diabolic Tutor definitely not. Diabolic Intent, yes. Diabolic Intent, 100% playable. Diabolic Tutor, no. Demonic Tutor, yes. Yes. Sorry. And yeah, Diabolic Intent is like tutor number 4 or 5. Diabolic Intent is 4 or 5. Diabolic Tutor is nowhere near CEDH. Oh yeah, if you're casting Demonic Tutor and somebody has a Wandering Archaic, you are turning you're paying the 4 cost and you're getting a Diabolic Tutor. Yeah. Um, kind of the worst part is when Archaic is in play, counterspells are almost meaningless. And the other part is that it is a May cast, so if it is like a piece of spot removal and you remove something else, Wandering Archaic doesn't have to cast it. I mean, but they could cast it and they could just target the same thing again. Um, but yeah, they may. It is just such a beating. They may cast it. Yeah, every time it's seen play, it has warped the game around it. Let's go back. Let's go to the next one because I keep going. Lochiel, Clockwork Scholar. I did not think this would see CEDH play. It is in. It's being tested right now for Kaikar. Not Kaikar. Teshar. It's being tested right now for Teshar. The thing that does suck about it is the new philosophy that white card draw is only once a turn. This ability triggers only once each turn. Now, it's a decent body for 3 mana. If you spread things out, it's decent. Yeah, Mr. Awesome Socks, I totally have seen that. But I've also seen it just get cheated in with Eldritch Evolution, and people don't know what they're getting. Because if you're getting a 5-drop, you could be getting like Seedborn Muse. You could be getting. I mean, you could even be getting just like a Hushbringer because you're Eldritch Evolutioning. Yeah. Um. Do do do. Hofree. I did talk about this a little bit last time, but There actually is a deck that is working with Hofree. Um, People have been playing with it. I'm trying to find where that card is. It is a Moon Mist Griffin, I believe. You can get a infinite loop with Hofree, and oh, if I can type Griffin correctly, it is Mist Moon Griffin. When it dies, exile it, then return the top creature of graveyard to the battlefield. The thing is that it doesn't have to be in the graveyard when the ability triggers to resolve. So you can actually just loop the ability triggers from uh, Hofree, and you get if you have a sack outlet, you can get a free loop where every single time you loop, you just add another Griffin trigger to the stack, and you can continue getting triggers off of it. It's a 5-cost commander in Boros. It's not the best, but it's okay. Don't believe we talked about ecological appreciation last time around. Um, it has seen some play. People have been brewing with it in Marwyn, in Selvala, Explorer Returned, um, and basically in non-black, non-blue decks. This has been an interesting piece because they can find some deterministic wins, which is cool. Mostly you're getting like 2 combo pieces and 2 tutors for those combo pieces. And so you end up with like an Imperial Recruiter and a Recruiter of the Guard and then 2 pieces of combo. There's also a Goblin combo that worked with us that was pretty good. This, I was just incredibly sad. I was incredibly sad that this was like 4 mana and not like 2 mana so that you could like counteract a Dockside Extortionist for a reasonable amount of mana. But then, yeah. Cody is just a meme still. I didn't need to have this open. This is something that I'm going to be trying. I personally really want to try to like sack a treasure and flip a Bolas's Citadel. But that's just me. Because this is me just playing and wanting to figure out if I can actually do that. Um, yeah. We hadn't seen this card yet, and I was actually quite surprised by it. So, did anybody have any other cards from... This is Madcap Experiment on a creature. That is correct. But I like it being on a creature and being repeatable, is the thing. Galazeth Prismari. Ah, yes, this guy. So, I liked him, but he has a few very negative parts about him. There's a really big difference as far as almost Urza that actually causes a big problem that Urza gets around. Urza can still tap for mana with a Null Rod out because the mana that Urza is generating is actually a creature ability attached to Urza. He taps the creature to make mana. This just makes it so your treasures can tap for a mana of any color for instants or sorceries. He also, or it, does not have any sort of card advantage or infinite mana sink. Yeah. And Witherbloom Elder Dragon, the pay 10 life and tap all your lands. I don't see that as being super viable for competitive EDH. There are situations where it can be used in constructed, but that in the command zone is not great. Um, and I have yet to think of a situation where tutoring it into play is better than tutoring in something like Razaketh. So, let's move on to one of our patrons, Josh, or Super Cavitation, has an Imoti deck here, which it is casual, and I wasn't 100% sure if Karuga. It says maybe board. I assume that this actually is a Karuga companion deck based off the fact that we don't have anything at 3 CMC or less. Um, yeah. And so if you're not familiar, Imoti has Cascades, that spells with CMC 6 or greater also have Cascade. It's an additional trigger that they get when you cast it. Um, and the notes Josh gave me was he wasn't sure if he should be leaning away from or optimizing the Momer Vig lines, and if he should be running more clone effects for Imoti. The basic theme of the deck really is just Cascade and Ramp, get Storm Count high, and then Mind's Desire, or just outvalue everybody by getting a ton of free mana. And he's been testing out Augmenter Pugilist, which is amazing. If you're not familiar with Augmenter Pugilist, that is a flip card that. Pull this over here. Come on. It's a 3-cost creature that does nothing, but on the backside, it is 5 cost to basically turn all the creatures you have into Imoti and make every single one of your spell cascade like 50 times. Yes, Omen, Lab Maniacs are back. If you check our YouTube channel, I have put out, I think, 5 videos in the last month. I am working on doing this as a full-time job, and I've got a bunch of stuff going, so I'm stoked for it, and I'm glad people are here. And generally, in this case, what I try to do is walk through what all options we got here. In general, I like the idea of Imoti. The Karuga side is actually kind of hilarious. I hadn't thought of doing that. I approve, and I approve some of the shenanigans you've done as far as like getting around the 3 CMC changes with stuff. Where was it? Like Search for Tomorrow, where you can suspend it for a green. I did think up of actually quite a few options that might be decent for you depending on what your needs are. Recent skepticism, I'll get to that in a moment. Let me finish up this for Josh and then I will hit that. Just remind me. So you had Search for Tomorrow in here. I thought you might also want to look at this new card from Commander 21. Because you pay 3 mana, suspend it for 3 turns, and it's a free Imoti trigger that draws you 2 cards. Seems pretty solid. And it's something you can prep. Then there were a few others that can definitely get around casting costs that you didn't have already. Specifically Summoning Trap and Cobra Trap. I don't necessarily think Cobra Trap is necessarily as great, but Summoning Trap is definitely, if they interact with what you're doing, you basically just get to recascade again. 100% worth it there. Then there's a few other ways of just getting around mana costs. Primeval Protector. It costs 11, but he costs 1 less for each creature your opponents control, so there's a pretty good shot that he'll cost like 4 or 5, but will cascade. It might be. I might have just failed at seeing it. I just failed at seeing it. You're good. You're good. We'll just close that and think I didn't see that. But one you didn't include is Commandeer, which is really good. you get to take their counter spell and you also get to cascade on top of it, or you get to take any of their other spells because you just get to take control of that spell for discarding 2 blue cards. It's hilarious to actually resolve. It is like 15 to 20 bucks, but it's hilarious. Along that same lines, if you want to try this one, is a Lorosaurus Rider. Just exile 2 green cards, but you get something that might be kind of big plus another cascade. That's 6 or less. Then the last 2 that kind of cheat on mana again are Into the Story, which says it costs 7, but in reality you're probably going to be casting it for 4. 4 to get a 6-drop cascade. Decent. And then the last one is you're going off of Mind's Desire. You could put Magus of the Mind in there. Mr. Awesome Socks, thanks for joining us. Have a good dinner. And so, Josh, these are kind of probably the biggest ones that I thought you would want to look at is Magus of the Mind, Into the Story, Summoning Trap, and Commandeer. Because they're just going to cheat through stuff for you super easy. Ah, okay. On the same line. You had a Lorosaurus and you had Into the Story. Okay. Solid. So then Magus, Summoning Trap, and Commandeer are probably going to be pretty good options. I've actually been I had Magus of the Mind in an Anala deck, and the fact that Anala gave it haste was really nice. Um, the reason why it might be decent is because you can put it out there and then cascade on a future turn, and it lowers your cost for that. Um, I know people will be scared of it sitting in play. It's there's give or take on it, but it's a way to split up your cost if you need to. So I'll write up a little bit more and I'll send this to you. And then let me see. Anything that I would recommend you cutting. You usually don't get to go off twice. So the reason why I'd say the Magus specifically is because it lets you prep your combo turn. You could say play your Magus before you even play Imoti and just have it in play. And people don't necessarily need to. People won't. Uh, you're just breaking up. It's kind of a layaway as far as your costs go. There was a few questions I had regarding your ramp choices. I didn't see a Skyshroud claim, but there was like Vastwood Surge, and then there was Migration Path. There is and just thinking about this, there was the one that was like really. No, never mind. I was thinking of a new card from Strixhaven that has an alternative cost you can pay, but you give somebody else a land. Cards worth cutting. I love the Evoke. Has Brazen Borrower been worth it? It's a cool card, but it kind of sticks out as something that it just you're really bouncing a non-land permanent, and this part of it is really nothing. So if you are wanting Brazen Borrow specifically for the bounce and non-land permanent, I would rather put in Capsize than have this in the deck. Just double checking. Yeah, nope, that's good. That one's the one with Cascade. Um, Meteor Golem I haven't been as big on. If you're paying 7 cost for it, I generally would rather do a Spine of Ishtar because you get to destroy anything. Yeah, Capsize for sure because of the buyback looping. And it's so much better than Brazen Borrower in that regard. Jester's great. Ibex is okay. Um, the gaining trample is the really big part that's really awesome. The Momer lines that you have, did you have a specific Momer line that you're working on? Just double checking a few things, making sure I didn't miss anything. Definitely am not as big on Mystic Confluence. If this is supposed to be primarily a counter spell, I would probably go for like Force of Will. If it's the fact that it has all these other options on it, it's okay. It's iffy for me. Also, I've been out of it. I've been out of it for Darkstealing in a long time. Pugilist. Where am I not seeing Pugilist? Oh, Augmenter. Augmenter, yep. Okay. I see. I would probably, if you're keeping Mystic Confluence in because it's a counterspell you don't mind hitting off of Cascade, I would personally probably swap it with Cryptic Command. Because then when you need it as a counterspell, it's easier, it's cheaper to cast. Um, you only get 2 things, but generally bounce and draw is almost always effective. I just, it's iffy. But I can totally see it worthwhile. Yeah, that's the thing is it sounds great. It's better in like Cube, but in EDH it's not necessarily as great. In Cube this is a blowout because it's like 5 cost, counter you spell draw 2. And that's great. But in EDH it's not nearly as good. Um I'll do some more thinking about what to cut and I'll get back to you. I'll put it into the channel, Josh, and I'll go from there. Um, let me hit these other questions that we've got. So Omen regarding Archidekt versus Moxfield versus TappedOut. Um, I was on TappedOut. TappedOut is crap. TappedOut is slow. TappedOut. The security on TappedOut is terrible, and they go through and edit decks to mess with their database because their database is really outdated. Um, so I had been off of Tapped Out for well over a year. When I moved off of Tapped Out, I moved to Archidekt. And there's several things about Archidekt that I really like that Moxfield doesn't have. Sandbox Mode for Archidekt is amazing. You can basically start creating deck. You can make uh, your own sections of what you're wanting to do. So let me just add a few cards in here. You can make a new category. And you can easily move things in and out of those categories. So I used this on the last stream to walk through how I do cutting from 150 down to 100 cards on a deck when I'm not doing like the specific list I bought online. This isn't something that Moxfield has. Also, there are some things in Archidekt that I don't like, that I get frustrated with. Specifically, they like to use the newest and the best art. So when I do a demonic tutor, their default is, well, until just a little bit ago, their default was this. It is just the newest set card of it, and so it's like it also really messes with the price of your deck that I don't like. So at one point, like I put in a regrowth, and it pulled the summer magic version of it. Um, yeah. So Moxfield, it's okay. It does most of the things you want it to do. Let me actually go to a deck that's already here. Um, I would like to be able to see all the cards and not like scroll over something and have to look over here. I like the fact that in Archidekt I can actually just look at the cards easily. Um, Archidekt really doesn't have a good primer yet. Then adjusting the sort types, sorting in Archidekt is a little bit better. Where's the view mode? Is that here? Okay. Yeah, okay. So I have seen this, but I'm not seeing the whole card right here when I mouse over it. I'm needing to view it over here. Flusterstorm. I want to see the whole Flusterstorm where I'm here. Oh yeah, 10k for a deck for 100%. I think this is also like mostly foiled out is what this primer has, is what it looks like, but maybe not. Oh, they aren't running Tabernacle. Oh well. Yeah. But then like here, yeah, Static Orb. Static Orb isn't. Static Orb shouldn't be $83. Let me just. Yeah, Static Orb's like 20 bucks. But we've got the. This is something that Archidekt does quite a bit. Yeah, Time Twister will do that. 100% Time Twister will do that. 10k deck, half of it's one card. Yes. Welcome to CEDH. Welcome to the reserve list. All right. So I think the biggest thing that Moxfield doesn't have is a good sandbox, because I like to. Archidekt does a good job mimicking what I do in paper digitally. I think that's probably the best way I can describe why I like Archidekt more than anything else, is because I can do what I do physically online with minimal effort. But then I can also do the digital side of it very easily and brew up a deck. And then I can try to find where the two of cards I actually have versus cards that I wanted to have can meet up fairly easy. So that's my thing on Archidekt versus Moxfield and whatnot. There was another question. Let me go back here. What was this question? Double checking chat. Thoughts on first sliver. Okay. All right. Recent skepticism. Getting back to you. Said thoughts on first sliver, leaning on more breach lines. Breach is amazing. Breach is incredibly efficient. Breach gets you almost everything you want in a deck, and if you can run breach and run breach effectively, there's almost no reason not to. The big plans right now are Ad Naus, Ad Naus supporting everything you can do, which would be like Thassa's Oracle, or it would be breach, um, or you are running stacks. Like those are really the big things. And by stacks, I mean you're running null rods or you're running rule of laws. Those are like the really three big things that you are seeing in most games. And if you're not seeing one of those three things, you're in a really big outlier pod, or you've got everybody on uh, Maverick decks that are just like out of nowhere. So if you let me see what the first sliver decks are actually on right now. I had first sliver together. I was learning it, and I never successfully went off with it because most of the time when I was playing it, I was going up against like Cobblepots, Endless Stacks, Yoroke deck, or the one time I did actually Demonic Consultation. I did it during my upkeep. I Demonic Consultation for Food Chain, and Food Chain was the top card of my library. So not only did I exile my entire library, I then moved to my draw step and just showed myself the door. Everybody's got to do it once. Everybody's got to kill themselves to Demonic Consultation. Um, yeah, First Sliver is just, in my opinion, it is the best 5-color food chain. Korvold is an amazingly fun food chain as well. The big thing is whether you want to run blue. If you want to run blue, you run first sliver. If you don't care about blue or you don't have blue cards yet, Korvold is amazing. But in this case, being able to jump in on Underworld Breach, yeah, this is just classic Shaper Food Chain Sliver, 100% on Breach. No reason not to. Yeah. Um, so the big things that Underworld Breach let you do, they let you recast your food chain from the graveyard. It also lets you find your food chain, and it also lets you exile your cast from exile creatures. It's just really good. I mean, the biggest challenge for a food chain deck is getting food chain in play and not having it destroyed with your first cast from exile creature on the stack. That is like, once you get past that, you're golden. And if you do miss that fact, if it does get destroyed, well, Underworld Breach lets you recast it without having to jump through hoops and go get a regrowth. You just are able to cast it immediately as long as you have more cards in your graveyard. And you're running Lion's Eye. Is this on Brain Freeze? It is on Brain Freeze. And it's on no Wheel of Fortune. Okay. But it's on Brain Freeze. That's fine. I'm 100% behind this. It's 3 cards that you can run that have minor uses outside of it. I mean, technically, if somebody like top of deck tutors, you could brain freeze them before they actually get to draw the card, and it's not 100% dead. Top of deck tutors still are a thing. And Lion's Eye Diamond, It definitely has fewer uses, but it is one that if you're going online with Underworld Breach, it's fine. The big downside of not having cards in your hand, you get around that by the fact that you can just cast the cards from your bin. I don't see any reason not to do this. Ghostly Pilfer. I don't remember what card that is. No. Come on. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. So they had card draw whenever you cast a card from exile, Josh. Yeah. Notes about Food Chain Ukima being good. Food Chain Ukima is good, um, but Food Chain Sliver is better than Ukima. Ukima is nice in that it can just be a giant clock. And Luke was playing Food Chain Ukima, and the whole thing is like if you don't have any actions, just casting Kaiser and Ukima, it gets to be a really big clock, and people can't deal with it, which is cool. Um, but after that, it's just kind of a little. You're not running red. You don't get to do Wheel of Fortune. You don't get to do. Actually, probably the biggest issue is you don't have card advantage of the command zone, which Food Chain Sliver is the very last thing you really want to do, but it is a I have nothing else I can do action that you don't get with Ukima and Kizar. Where are we at here? Just double checking chat again. Uh, Recent skepticism. I don't think Cobble has updated your Rogue because I'm pretty sure. So Cobble was running Tatyova, which was essentially his Yurok deck without black. Then Yurok came out, and it's doing everything that Cobble liked that that Tatyova was doing, but was doing it better. And then Sakashima and Kodama came out, and it does Yurok a million times better. And so I'm pretty sure Cobble has moved to Sakashima and Kodama as that better iteration of Yurok at this point. Talking about proxies, which I definitely do not care about proxies as long as I can understand what the cards are. Even at like entry level decks. Yes, real cards are only an issue when you have sanctioned events, and you can use playtest cards and non-standard ones and non-sanctioned ones. I do think proxies are going to be more of an issue when COVID is done and people go back to um, local game stores because local game stores have started to track commander nights, not even necessarily with people knowing that. I did not know that I was signing up for commander nights until I looked at my planeswalker points and saw that I had like 90 points from showing up and being part of a casual event where the store owners basically just noted everybody was there and made an event and logged them in there because they got Play Network credit for running an event even though it was just a casual night. Um, and if stores are getting WPN credit for events, technically those need to be sanctioned events, which means you can't have proxies. And if that continues being the way WotC's going, then proxy discussions in local game stores are going to start becoming a lot more of an issue. Um, You know what? I will check to see if Cobble has updated, because he's on Moxfield. Let's see what Cobble has that he's touched on Moxfield. There's Double Kodama. Pretty sure Bounce House was his Tatiova prior to Euroke. Then Bag Farm is all of his Shadow Bag shenanigans. Yep, Mainland Ascendancy. Okay, yeah. Oh, Crom Kodama. Okay. But yeah, he's got Sakashima in here. Yep, that's what I thought. So he's not having Sakashima in the command zone. He's just going Teamer. Okay. A key thing is if you know the person's username, you can generally, like I just Cobblepot Moxfield. Hey, it's all there. Yeah. I think he was on Tapped Out before. Let's see. And I think most of his stuff on there, yeah. I think he hasn't touched most of his decks here in a year or more. Huh? So this is the thing that I was saying Tapped Out will do. If you have old decks that are being updated, they will go in, like if they have a ton of comments, they'll go in and archive the comments, and it will say that the deck has been updated more recently than it actually has. So if I looked at my Tassiger list that's on here, it'll say that it's been updated and not too long ago, even though I haven't touched it in quite some time. Yeah, Euroke hasn't been touched in a year, it looks like. Yeah, it still has Flash in it. Alright, Josh. Good to see you. Thanks for coming. See you around. We're actually pretty close to being done. I didn't really have anything else to talk about for the night. Can you do diff what was changed in the last update? I don't know if Tapped Out does differences. Yeah, here, give me a second. Let me see. I'll check Tapped Out as far as the, let me look at my login. So I haven't saved a deck on Tapped Out in over a year and a half. Updated 2 months ago. They archived comments. 5 months they archived comments. Yeah. So they have gone through and edited decks by messing with stuff. So there is one thing I would say about good old Tapped Out. The fact that they don't have any sort of security on their descriptions and people can override like CSS and whatnot. Let me see. So I think Shaper is the one who usually did like a crazy CSS on his decks. Yeah, okay, here. So if we look at this deck, which is the standard Tapped Out experience, this is somebody who went through and edited the CSS file and then added that CSS file to the description for the deck. So inside of this area, there is a CSS file that Shaper has added in, and it adjusts how Tapped Out works. The developer of Tapped Out does not do any code sanitation on any of these user fields. So I had a friend who identified this and gave, all right, gave a snippet of his code to a friend who had a really high-end, a really high-profile deck that people were looking at a lot, and had him put this code snippet in his deck description. The code snippet just had whoever looked at the deck auto upvote my friend's deck. That was it. It worked 100% of the time. You would, oh yeah, yeah, you can. You can totally exploit code off of the description in your deck. And the solution from the tapped out developer was not to fix this problem. It was to ban my friend from tapped out. Think about that. Rather than fix this code exploit, just ban the guy who exploited it. Yeah. That was the first. As soon as I found out, I started looking for a different deck place. Yep. Yep. Yeah. So, why tapped out is a dumpster fire? Yeah, I mean, or sanitize the code. Take out code snippets. Take out JavaScript from your deck description. Take out a script tag. Allow CSS, but take out a script feature. No, it's just all there. I'm pretty sure you could probably do SQL injection if you really tried, but I don't want to bother with that. Yeah. Um, that is why we don't do that. And I 100% agree. This should have been fixed yesterday. So with that, I've covered everything that I did want to cover for today. However, I have some time. I have the ability to play some games if people want to play a game for a little bit. Thanks for hanging out and chatting. I'm glad I was able to go over some stuff that's on my mind. So I actually do have some more. I will say this quickly. I have some more casual topics that I either want to put into an article or put into a video, but with what I have currently lined up, it won't happen for a really long time. So I might bring up some of these things on this. Specifically, I'm calling them I was thinking of calling them Johnny files, where it's basically just stupid Johnny cards that I think people should be playing more. And of that, you will be seeing some of these in next gameplay video next week. Specifically Skybind, because people need to play Skybind more often. In truth, they need to play Skybind and Sarah's Sanctum more often, but Sarah's Sanctum is a reserve list card that costs like $600. I'm sorry. But it's really fun, especially if you're running Heliod God of the Sun, which makes enchantment cleric tokens, which makes Sarah's Sanctum tap for more, which triggers Skybind and lets you exile Sarah's Sanctum until the end of turn, which lets you do that on every player's turn, which makes more and more dudes every rotation, and you get it over on the table. That's just me. So, Omen, good to see you. Thanks for noticing that we're back. I'm going to be trying to post more things that are relevant on Reddit. The things I had posted recently, things I had put up weren't really CEDH, so I didn't put them in CEDH, and they didn't really have big discussion points outside of a video that I posted. If you really want to see my channel, this video right here, building a deck to win in every game of Commander. This is something that I personally believe everybody should really consider. If you haven't watched this, I will say I'll give you a quick little bit that I do go over in here. Coming from playing Heads Up Magic, you expect a 50-50 win rate. You think, I am doing good if I'm winning more than one game out of two. If I'm going 6-4, I'm doing good. That's a 60% win rate. For Commander, you're playing 4 players. In reality, you should expect to see 1 in 4. But in your head, you should be seeing 6 and 4. 6 out of 10 games you should see a win in your head for most Magic. But then in Commander, you should see 1 in 4 as a win. And if you don't actually think about that and realize what that means for you and your deck construction and how you're playing Magic and Commander, it can really lead to things like the arms races, or just not having fun while you're playing with your friends. And if you haven't seen my channel, oh, let me see. You probably aren't seeing this. This video I was trying to pull up. Building a deck to win in every game of Commander. Right down here. Put it out 3 weeks ago. You can't see it because my head's in the way. Building a deck to win in every game of Commander. Go watch it, please. Alright. The other day you got to play a Mirror Battlesphere and then Mystery Collection it to get 4 times more via the tokens. I approve. Do that with a Avenger of Zendikar. Alright. Yeah. Thanks for coming. Thanks for sticking around. Where is my... Whatever. I'll just open up a new one. Sorry. When you have 10 browsers open because you were doing so many different things. I need to check something. How many people? We got 12 people here. Alright. Thanks for sticking around. If you are interested, I will transition to playing some Risk of Rain 2. If you have not played the game, it is incredibly fun. If you would like, you can join our Discord. I'm going to be in chat. We can chat. And I'll be streaming here in just a little bit. So